This video is brought to you by me. For $1 a month, you can support the channel directly and help me keep doing what I love. Thanks for watching and supporting. What happens when you mix The Matrix, Independence Day, and Infamous in a blender? The result probably looks a lot like Saints Row 4, the finale mainline release in the series before the reboot almost 10 years later. After getting their groove back and taking over a brand new city called Steelport, the Saints have their sights set on power greater than they have ever known: political power. After saving Earth from a nuclear disaster, the leader of the 3rd Street Saints has now been elected President of the United States, which frankly is the least believable part of this story. Not because he's a criminal or inept, I mean, when has that ever stopped anyone from holding office before? It's not believable because he's British, disqualifying him from running at all.
Do you want to be the president who cured cancer or the president who solved world hunger?
Cancer can kiss my ass.
Good choice.
After slipping to catastrophically low approval ratings in the polls in spite of being the president who cured cancer, the boss is in a slump. Kinsey, the computer hacker and scientist who joined the Saints in the last game, warns of an impending threat to the world, approaching much sooner than expected. Before the boss can even react, Earth is invaded, immediately going to war. Peace isn't an option. The Zin Empire is here to collect the best minds of humanity to add to the collection of their leader Zinyak. Kinsey, the self-proclaimed smartest person in the administration, is immediately taken by Zinyak. As the Saints fight back, their efforts become futile. One by one, Shondi, Pierce, and returning character from Saints Row 1, Ben King, are all abducted. In a final showdown, the boss succumbs to his own hubris, with Zinyak abducting him too. If it's starting to feel like Saints Row 4 is almost too far of a departure to be a mainline game, you'd be right. Saints Row 4 began life as a DLC for Saints Row the 3rd, announced on April Fool's Day of 2012, before being folded into its own full release. While it is known that a lot of the original vision was retained in the final game, the only cut content available to play through is Enter the Dominatrix, a cutting room floor collection that shares the same name as the original title of the DLC package. What is still here in Saints Row 4 creates the wackiest, most ridiculous SR game yet, meaning the highs and lows look more like an EKG than an ascending line graph. After his abduction, the boss awakens in 50s America, whitewashed fences, clean language, and cars limited to 10 miles an hour. Everyone fits in their own little structured boxes, conforming to the area of town that they are in. This is the boss's personal hell that Zinyak has trapped him in. Self-control, restraint, and structure are words banned from the boss's vocabulary, and now it's all he has. Fortunately for him, Kinsey has broken into the structured simulation and gives the boss a way out. After turning the town against him by saying piss, the boss frees himself from the confines of the program, giving him range to do what he wants, like kill the town sheriff. After going on a killing spree and wrecking the town, the simulated city crashes, ejecting the boss Neo-style from the holding pod Zinyak is keeping him in. Too bad that holding pod is inside of a Zin ship, surrounded by an uncountable number of alien guards. Luckily, aliens conveniently stack into neat and orderly piles when you kill them, and the boss fends off enough waves of them for Kinsey to find and rescue him. On the ship, the Vice President Keith David is already rescued. Let's clear up a few things about Keith David. You might be thinking he sounds a lot like Julius Little, the founder of the Saints who betrayed the gang and left the boss for dead on a flaming boat. They are totally different. Just listen to these audio clips comparing the two.
You don't get it. Zinyak said he can restore her. All I have to do is kill you. No one calls Roddy now. He shows up where he's needed most. Let's go.
I hope that clears things up. On their way back to Earth, Zinyak destroys the planet right in front of them. To get revenge and save what's left of humanity, the boss, with Kinsey's help, goes back into the simulation of Steelport in order to dismantle it from the inside, which reveals clues about the whereabouts of the remaining abducted Saints. If you followed my retrospective series of videos about Saints Row, you probably know what's coming next. Activities. Scattered through the simulated Steelport are multiple types of diversions you can complete to earn in-game cash. Fans of the series will recognize staple activities like mayhem, where you commit property damage crimes on a massive scale, or insurance fraud, where you throw yourself in front of cars to get hospital bills. However, most of the activities are focused around the biggest, most ridiculous gameplay additions in the whole series, the superpowers. We got a taste of these abilities in the Saints Row the Third DLC, The Trouble with Clones, where you got temporary abilities to super sprint and throw a Hadouken. In Saints Row 4, these abilities are front and center, rendering any sort of transportation useless, and it's not even close. You can earn these abilities starting in the second mission of the game. It's really a shame that the devs put effort toward bringing back monster trucks and refining the upgrade system to vehicles, because there isn't a point in bothering with it at all. It's such a night and day difference that I can't imagine anyone would invest time in the cars. You can jump and glide across bodies of water. What is a car going to do for you? While sprinting and jumping completely break traversal, the other powers have a little bit better of balance thanks to a cooldown meter, making them act more like a supplemental grenade replacement instead of a full-on replacement for guns. Until you get the explosive projectile power, and then you can one-shot entire strongholds. There are three main types of powers: Blast, Telekinesis, and Stomp. Blast is like the Hadouken with different elements like fire and ice. It's helpful for causing damage or freezing enemies during battle. Telekinesis allows you to pick up and throw cars and people. The new Professor Genki game Mind Over Murder relies on TK because it involves chucking items through rings. Compared to Super Ethical Reality Climax, Mind Over Murder is simply not fun. It is redeemed by the announcers reprising their roles from 3 and brings stellar fun performances.
So how do you think things are going for our contestants, Zach?
In this match, or in life in general?
I was thinking the first, but now that you mention it, let's talk about the second.
Well, I imagine it's not easy for them knowing that they're responsible for the deaths of billions of people through their hubris and what will ultimately be an unsuccessful bid to overtake Zinyak.
My thoughts exactly. Bringing about the near extinction of the human race is a heavy load to carry.
It sure is.
I love Rob Van Dam. The Stomp power allows you to send a shockwave through the ground to topple and disorient enemies. You also get some minor powers like a stat buff for your abilities and the superhero landing. These abilities can all be upgraded via purchase using power clusters that are scattered through Steelport. There are 1,255 of them, which is a goof on too many collectibles in open world games, but now also I have to find hundreds of these things to upgrade my character. Like I mentioned before, weapons are still a massive part of the game, and I would love a level of customization like the one here in every other game I play. Sure, similarly to how SR3's weapons feel kneecapped until you dump a bunch of money into them, the untouched starter weapons are miserable to use. But when you can turn your acid-shooting assault rifle into a rubber band gun, you learn to forgive and forget. My favorite touch of customization is on the dubstep gun. Yes, the dubstep gun. For some people, this is probably where Saints Row jumped the shark. If you were already turned off by the superpowers, you probably shut the game off after this. However, I personally find the gun funnier now than I did when the game came out. In 2014, dubstep was in every game's marketing because we were confused and convinced that the sound of two robots making love made for good music. Now dubstep is so old it's hilarious that you can kill people with a bass drop. It stayed in my arsenal the entire time because of how effective it was, and I loved using it. You can even customize it with different music tracks so the default one didn't overstay its welcome. The slice-of-life referential humor is aplenty in Saints Row 4. Some of it is timeless, some of it ages the game immediately. In classic Mass Effect fashion, you can seduce everyone on the ship, even the artificial intelligence program inside a floating orb that you freed from Zinyak.
All right, sit here still.
You need me to ravage you. Don't worry, I'm fully equipped to pleasure you.
But the missions in which you save the Saints are excuses to be homages to movies and games, including the series itself. Like the boss, each abducted member of the Saints is trapped in their own personally simulated hell. New recruit Asha is trapped in an endless loop of trying and failing to save the world from an evil version of the boss, which plays out like a mixture of Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid, where you shoot out lights like they are the true enemies. To save Pierce, you have to save him from this nightmare of being killed by Saints Flow energy drink mascots. You eventually have to kill the Stay Puft Saints Flow can in an homage to Ghostbusters. But where I think Saints Row 4 fails more than anything is how it tries to wrap the Saints Row 1 and 2 stories into the game in a half-baked kind of way. Saints Row 4 is so different from those games that they don't mix well at all. Instead, it feels like the game tries to reference the games for the sake of silencing the people who were disappointed by 3's seemingly clean slate approach. Take for instance Benjamin King, the leader of the Vice Kings in Saints Row 1. To save him from this digital cage, you go back to Stillwater to stop the loop of him getting killed by his associates Tanya and Warren, who actually did steal the gang out from under him in the first game. To appreciate this mission, you really need to have played that game because it barely explained who these people are in 4. The quality dips even further when it tries to meld the tones of the first 2 games and the last 2 games. The most earnest part of 4 is when you save Shaundi from her trap. Initially, the crew thinks they have found the late Johnny Gat in a simulation because the nightmare is shaped like a plane he was supposedly killed in. Instead, it turns out to be Shaundi's nightmare where she keeps seeing Johnny die in front of her. She feels personally responsible for his death because she feels the boss left Johnny alone on the plane to protect her. It's pretty heavy, probably the most serious writing since Saints Row 2. Then, once you think it's over, she is kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend Veteran Child, and you have to save her in a recreation of the fight from Saints Row 2. Her biggest fear is continually being the damsel in distress and relying on the gang to save her when she feels like it already cost them the life of Johnny Gat. It's why in Saints Row 3 she's so cold and badass and carries herself differently. As it would turn out, Gat is alive, in his own loop of watching his girlfriend Aisha get decapitated by the Ronin from Saints Row 2. It finally stops once the Saints break in and help him finish the loop. It makes sense that Gat is alive since you never see him die and there was never a funeral in Saints Row the 3rd. Zinyak actually captured him years before Earth's invasion because he saw Johnny as the only legitimate threat to his plan. By the time you save Johnny, he's been watching Aisha die in front of him repeatedly for years, and it's played for laughs. The rescue takes place in an admittedly very good 2D beat-em-up, and when you get him back on the ship, all he says is, "I'm ready to live for the future." Like, are you okay, my guy? You want to talk about it? And then, after all that buildup of the bait and switch about Shaundi's guilt, for her and Gat to not even speak after Gat returns, it feels like a slap in the face. Sorry I cared about these characters you built up, won't make that mistake again. I guess I shouldn't have held my hopes too high after 3, but there is no story here whatsoever. Zinyak invades, you break out all the Saints, and then you take down Zinyak. It's really all just set pieces held together by tissue paper thin links. There's a massive cast of characters, and yet it feels entirely wasted. Many of them are there for nostalgia and nothing else. It might seem like I am railing on this game, but it really is just focused toward the lack of a story. I have followed these characters for 3 to 4 games now. I care about what happens to them. And for the grand finale of the series as we know it outside of some DLC and Gat Out of Hell, it's incredibly disappointing to see nothing done with any of them. Saints Row 4 is all over the place. The gameplay core is incredibly fun, the activities range in quality immensely, and the story is essentially non-existent. It's so much fun to play that with some balancing, better story ideas, and some normal activities that don't rely on superpowers, it could have been amazing. Instead, Saints Row 4 feels like eating candy. Am I aware the superpowers make me feel stupidly overpowered? Yes. But I just went from one end of the map to the other in a minute. There may not be any substance to this game, but it sure is delicious to play. Thank you so much for watching my video and making this far, I really appreciate it. If you like the video, please leave a like on it. If you want more videos like this, please hit subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, consider sending this video to someone who would appreciate it, or even going down to my Patreon link in the description. For $1 a month you get extra videos and early access to anything I publish. So now that we've covered all 4 mainline games, which one is your favorite and where do you want the reboot to go? I want to take one last second to thank my higher tier patrons, Kuda Hori, Andrew Lang, Andrew Elmore, Andrew Donahoe, 8-Bit Jesus, Just Jessica, and Okayla. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.